Welcome to the program today. Mondo Gonzales here in studio with our good friend L.A. Marzulli, and we're going to be talking about, L.A., really, the world is an interesting place.
Yes, it is. Very enigmatic.
So it's good for you to be here. It's always good to hang out.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Mondo.
And one of the things that we want to really just share with all of you is you have what you call the Watchers series, and I just started rewatching this in the last few weeks because there's so much
information,
interesting things about really what we'd say the enigmatic things of the world. So kind of give us a rundown of this. How did it come to be, too?
The way it came about was I was on Coast to Coast one night, and Richard Shaw heard me on Coast to Coast. So he contacted me. I'm a producer in Hollywood, blah, 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 blah. So we met up for lunch, and we had this wonderful lunch meeting. And then I went down to his studio at that time in Hollywood. It was really cool. And we hit it off. We had lunch. We filmed some stuff with me, and we were in communication with each other. So I was at a casting call for this show about the supernatural. It was a Hollywood deal. It was production. So I went in for a casting call, and I spent the whole day there. There were psychics. There were a couple of guys from the old UFO Hunter film. There were a couple of actors, actresses, all this kind of stuff. And the whole thing was staged. No one had written anything. I was the only author that had ever written anything. And at the end of that, at the end of the day, realizing that this is all smoke and mirrors, right? I'm out in the parking lot. I immediately got on my phone. I go, Rick, we got to make our own series. And by this time, I had already been on 2 seasons of Ancient Aliens. And I left that because I wasn't getting a fair shake. With all due respect to Ancient Aliens, they've been on for like 15 years or whatever. But they would sort of massage what I was saying to fit their paradigm. So I said, Rick, we got to make our own show. He goes, well, how much money do we have? Nothing. He goes, okay, let's do it. So we created the first Watchers film, which was kind of amazing. And I think we went down and we printed up 200 DVDs or 100 DVDs. They sold in less than 24 hours. This is before I was on YouTube. So this is just on the blog. So Rick, oh my gosh. So then we go down and we print 200, and that sells within 24 hours.
Well, I mean, kind of getting ahead of it, what was were you trying to do like an Ancient Aliens type, but a Christian version, or what?
The very first film was on the UFO phenomenon.
Okay.
And we talked about my close encounter when I was 12 years old, and then later on, we sort of reenacted that. But it was on the UFO phenomenon. And Rick he was working on a laptop with the editing. He had one camera, which was antiquated. The guy was a master filmmaker. And we made basically 10 films together. And the 11th one is the last thing we actually did together, which is Anatomy of a Hoax. But I'm getting way ahead of myself.
Yeah, I mean, the amazing thing about it is we all know, or maybe you do or not, but the whole Ancient Aliens phenomenon and series is extremely popular. But I want to go back for a minute on something you said, because what you've done here in the 10, 11 DVDs or films that you guys have done, you mentioned that they were basically editing. Let's say you're coming from a solidly biblical, supernatural paradigm, right. And when you're sharing this on there, they're massaging it in a way that is maybe diminishing that? Absolutely.
They would make it sound like Noah was an extraterrestrial, right? Instead of the biblical paradigm. I mean, you can still watch those. You can go on, their site, and you can go to season 1 and season 2 and see me there. I was supposed to be on season 3. They wanted me to do something on Fatima, and this is before the Lord had given me marching orders to go to Fatima. So I said, I'm not doing this. And in some ways, honestly, I wish I had stayed, but I'm a lot older and perhaps maybe a little wiser. I should have stayed, because I would have been the one dissenting voice in that whole film series. And maybe they would have kicked me out anyway. Who knows? But what's amazing about that is your kids and your grandkids absolutely watch that, and they're being indoctrinated, because Ancient Alien series, with all due respect to History Channel, huge budget, but they're promulgating the ancient astronaut theory, which is that we were seeded here by an advanced race of extraterrestrials. I've written numerous books, produced countless DVDs, 30 DVDs, that touch on this one way or the other. This is the coming great deception. These are not friendly ETs, our space brothers. This is the fallen angels, look, why would Jesus warn us that even the elect would be deceived if that were possible. Men faint from fear from what is coming upon the earth, right? I mean, it's like, that even the elect would be deceived. It's just, there it is. It's all there. So something's about to happen, and I think we're living in a period of time. And what is manifesting? In the halls of Congress, for crying out loud. David Grush, we've got non-human biologics retrieved from crash craft. That's in Congress. Not on George Norrie's show on Coast to Coast, and I love George, but in the halls of Congress. So we are in an unprecedented window of time, absolutely.
And one of the fascinating things just about the whole, I would call it a genre, is this is, as L.A. said, this is exactly what young people, and I find it fascinating myself, but young people are interested in. They're seeing it all over TikTok. They're seeing they're seeing that whole paradigm, the ancient aliens paradigm, which is very popular. And you're coming in saying, okay, we're going to investigate some of these fun, mysterious things that are happening or that do happen around the world, or ancient history. But you're going to do it through the biblical lens. And that really is, I think, as I've seen it, and that's why I was watching it again, is because you're talking about all these very fascinating topics. And so you do Watchers 1, you realize, hey, there's a people have a desire to see this. So where do you kind of go into Watchers 2?
I think without seeing what we actually did, I think too, and this was sort of amazing. We realized that we had hit a niche. I mean, definitely people were. So we started Watchers 2. I believe Watchers 2. We start talking about the Shroud of Turin, and that's always been very close to my heart. In fact, Gil Zimmerman, my new business partner, comes in, and we're working on a film right now. We're in post-production, the Holy Shroud, Holy Fire. It should be out. I was hoping to be talking about it at the Prophecy Watchers Conference, but it'll be in the fall more than likely.
Yeah. So I mean, the fascinating thing about all this is just when you have all these topics, and what I see about for example, ancient aliens, just they're providing an alternative history, and I would say a transparent questioning of the typical conventional paradigms, which we appreciate because, I understand academia. It can be very narrow at times.
It's very narrow, especially in archaeology.
Exactly.
Very, very narrow.
And so to be able to question those things is wonderful, but not to replace it with, again, that some ancient alien race came down here and planted a seed and through evolution.
Panspermia.
Exactly.
Through evolution, and here we are. Yeah. Genetically manipulated early man. And this is, I've been railing against this for almost 30 years now, literally. Almost 30 years. And I've been in research on it since 1990. So, and before that, I was immersed in the New Age before I was a Christian. So I see both sides of the aisle. I mean, I heard 50 years ago, 5 decades ago, the explanation of the rapture of a church by the New Agers. And we actually have this little track called What is the Truth, which talks about that, some people are not fit here anymore. They just don't fit in, and they're going to leave the planet in an afternoon. They're already explaining away. The other side of the aisle is explaining away the rapture of a church. Why would they do that? If there's no rapture of a church, then why would they be explaining it away? Because they know what's going to happen. And I think I think we're close. That's all I'll say. Not a date setter, but maybe next Wednesday. But the Shroud of Turin, that clip, those clips, both of those people that we interviewed, Dame Isabel Pixick and the Honorable Barry Schwartz, they're gone. Richard's gone. So the window of time, and I'll be 75 this year. I'm not being morbid, but I'm in my 8th decade. Thank you, Mondo. But when you start looking at this, how much time do I have left? And I want to finish strong and handles on the plow. There are 10 films in the Watchers series, and Richard Shaw, as a director, as an editor, as a filmmaker, just did an amazing job. Just an absolute amazing job.
Amen, amen. Well, we're going to take a little break where you can see how to get our magazine, which keeps you up to date on all the things that are happening, which, as we know, 2025 is already off to an amazing year. Things are changing so quick. Take a listen.
10 years ago, we began an exciting journey, a mission dedicated to spreading the good news of the soon return of Jesus. Our passion for teaching Bible prophecy is what drives us to warn the world of events that are soon to come. In the last 2 years, tens of thousands of prophecy watchers from all over the world have subscribed to our monthly magazine, The Prophecy Watcher. 12 DVDs on Bible prophecy can be yours when you subscribe to our 48-page full-color magazine for just 1 year, print or digital format, all for a gift of $50, with shipping included in the USA. The prophets of the Bible predicted a series of end-time wars, and we're seeing the final pieces of the puzzle fall into place. Russia, China, Iran, Syria, Turkey. The enemies of Israel are on the doorstep, just as the Bible predicted some 2,500 years ago. The Prophecy Watcher magazine includes the writings of dozens of prophecy experts like Gary Stearman, Mondo Gonzales, L.A. Marzulli, Bill Salus, Josh Peck, and many others, writing on fascinating subjects like the Rapture, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Red Heifer, the World Economic Forum, the Global Reset, digital currency, the Mark of the Beast, the Nephilim, and the Antichrist's beast system of global control, things you will likely never hear about in church. 12 bonus DVDs will introduce you to Ezekiel's Gog and Magog war and the road to Armageddon. We'll examine the supernatural side of the Bible as we investigate controversial issues like the Nephilim, government UFO cover-ups, and the Shroud of Turin. We'll address the Luciferian Rebellion, a mutiny that changed heaven and earth forever. Speaking of heaven, you'll enjoy Mondo's glimpse into God's creation as he explores the stunning beauty of the stars and galaxies, seen through the lens of our Psalm 19 observatory cameras. 12 issues of the magazine, plus 12 bonus DVDs, a $180 value, now available for your gift of $50 to support our worldwide television outreach. Care to become a fellow Prophecy Watcher? Just visit our online bookstore at prophecywatchers.tv. Partner with us today and help us take the message of the soon return of Jesus to the whole world.
Well, welcome back, and we are talking with L.A. Marzulli about his Watchers series, 11 DVDs, and going all the way back, really just to, there's probably, 50 topics or so, or 50 things that you end up researching, providing, I think, a fascinating survey into all things that are strange and weird and biblical. Of course, you guys did your own research. And you kind of talk in the beginning about the alien implants, Shroud of Turin, even the Torah codes. And then you kind of started switching over to talk about how you came into discovery of the skulls of Peru. And of course, that's a whole nother thing. But
Yeah.
we can't go into super detail, but kind of talk about how you went to cover that.
Well, what happened was that someone sent me a link, and I don't know who. They said, "Hey, LA, have you ever seen this?" I clicked the YouTube link, and there's Brian Forrester at Senior Juan's original Paracas History Museum. And Brian's holding up an elongated skull, and he's going on and off about it. I'm just kind of, you've got to be kidding me. So I emailed Brian, and he returned my email, and one thing led to another. And we went down there, I think, in 2012 or 2013, right in January, which is their summer. And there we are in the History Museum, the Paracas History Museum, and we're handling these elongated skulls. And Brian is there. It's all on film, which is just, and then Brian shows us this baby skull, which was wrapped up, which had just gotten to the museum. And a year later, we went back and we unwrapped that skull and we took DNA samplings of it. I mean, who gets to do that? Seriously? Joe Taylor was there, and others. Chase Klotsky tagged and bagged everything. Aaron Judkins was there, an archaeologist. This is before you came on board. And it's all on film. And Richard and I are we can't even believe it. Finally, they unwrapped the whole thing, and there's Senior Juan with Richard next to him. We're holding it up, and then I'm next to Senior Juan. We're holding this thing up. We did samples of it. We sent it to 3 different labs. There's no collusion between the labs. So here's something, bone, human remains, whatever. And we found out later, but much later, that the Peruvian government really doesn't care if you do DNA sampling from private museums. So it's like, why didn't someone tell us that before we went through the whole, but I digress. So here's the deal. All 3 labs came back U2E1 with that red-haired baby mummy skull.
Talk about the red hair. How unusual is this? Yeah.
That shouldn't be there. The skull was elongated. The orbits are 25 to 30% larger than a normal human being. The skull was already elongated at 2.5 years old. So the whole idea of cranial deformation, this is what we take umbrage with, because mainstream archaeology, and there's a lot of great archaeologists out there, but they're all in lockstep. And any new information, oh no, this is cranial deformation. This is cradle headboarding, when you bind the head of a child and you elongate it. Excuse me, no, it's not. We know that some skulls have been cranial deformity. We understand that, cradle headboarded. But the kicker was Rick Woodward's study when we gave him all these samples and pictures and everything else. So for Raymond Magnum, which is where the spinal column attaches to the skull, that hole is all the way to the posterior of the skull, all the way in the back. You can't manipulate that. It's done in utero. You can't cranial headboard and somehow move that. So, and then there's no sagittal suture, the orbits. We have a film outside of Watchers that we did on the DNA. Basically, we have doctors, archaeologists, anthropologists, a whole bevy of professionals, optometrists, chiropractors are all saying, whatever this is, it's genetic. So the fact that it comes back, the DNA, the mitochondrial DNA comes back U2E1, which is Eastern Europe, that rewrites history. And the academics, and I understand why. They don't want to rewrite history because everything has to change. They shouldn't be there. And we had carbon-14 dating done on that skull. It was 1,935 years old, which predates Columbus by, centuries. So something else is going on here. And of course, and this is, you brought this up. Oh, it's contamination. Well, if it's contamination, why didn't we get nuclear DNA? Well, we didn't get nuclear DNA. So we're actually, I'll whet people's appetites. We are actually doing further testing on another artifact. And what we have found is astounding. And I will be talking about this, shameless plug, at the Prophecy Watchers Conference coming up here at the end of March.
And one of the other things that I love what LA does in all this is, you and I joke about all the time, is kind of going back, harkens back to Indiana Jones when he, in his movies, is like, you got to get out of the library. And so, instead of just sitting there researching stuff, you're flying all over the world. You're going on site, you're getting there, getting your hands dirty. One of the things that has come up quite often, and there was a lot of rumors, and you were one of the original, well, I think you're the one that broke it, was a lot of people wonder, and I'm sure you might, is are there still giants around today? In the Bible says there are giants, that settles it right there, but are there still giants around? And this, you came, tell a little bit of the backstory of how the Kandahar giant story.
Richard Shaw and I broke that story. It's all over the internet. People run the clips and they act like, they're the ones breaking the story. Richard Shaw and I broke it. So Richard's on this radio show doing an interview on the Torah codes. And some caller calls in and it's the end of the show, but Richard's still on and the caller's still on. And the caller out of the blue starts talking about he's ex-military, he was in Kandahar looking for high-value targets, and he tells the whole story. So as soon as Rick gets on the phone, LA, you got to call this guy. So I call this guy up. We call him a shooter, and I interviewed him 2 or 3 times before we brought him out and put him on camera. We disguised his voice. We pixelated his face. We also found another witness who was not part of his team, but was in the Kandahar province, who stated, yeah, the rumors about the giant were all over the place. Since then, I have had 2 other people come on the record with me. One was the grandson of the Bruja, the witch that was in Kandahar, who used to take goats and cattle to the cave, tie them to a stake so the giant wouldn't come into the little town. I'm not making this up. He came on the record. And his grandmother was a witch in the Kandahar province. So the story is, and this, by the way, there's another witness which I can't even begin to tell you. I can't jeopardize this person's identity, who completely corroborated the story, who had no axe to grind, who still remains anonymous. But I believe this guy 110%. I have his credentials. I know what he did. Anyway, so the Kandahar giant, a platoon goes missing around circa 2001. Looking for high-value targets in the province of Kandahar in Afghanistan. Remember, the Afghan war is going on. And they go missing. They miss their rally point. Nobody radios in. The next morning, another platoon is dispatched. The shooter is with that platoon. They're following the trail. They come to this...
The guy that you interviewed is with them.
Correct. Okay. He's with them. And they're following a trail, and they come down, and they're way up high in the mountains, and there's like a plateau, and as they're coming into this plateau, it's like it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's like it's mountainous, but there's like a level area, really not a plateau, just a level area,
like a shelf.
Like a shelf. Thank you. Like a shelf in that mountain, and above the shelf is a cave. And they're looking at bits of bone, what they look like parts of the radio, pieces of uniform. Something is going on here. Before they can react, this giant comes out of the cave, screaming, flaming red hair, brandishing a lance, screaming at the top of his lungs, red hair, double rows of teeth, although they don't know that at that time. And it's like, yelling at them, screaming, just bellowing. And one of these guys breaks out of the trance, because you're looking at a nightmare, a 12-footer, and starts shooting this thing. Well, the giant moved with such speed and agility that everyone is taken aback. And before anyone can do anything, this man is impaled by this lance, and up he goes. Now the giant is shaking the lance like this and bellowing again. Someone yells, "Shoot him in the head, shoot him in the head." And they all open fire, basically decapitating the giant. Not completely, but basically decapitating him. Down he goes. At this point, this soldier who's been impaled is still alive. They radio for a chopper, and the chopper comes out. The shooter told us that the stench was unbearable. Some men were actually vomiting because of the stench was just like a pile of corpses. I've never smelled that, I don't want to, but that's what he compared it to. And they flew back to the base. They wrote up their reports. They were told to rewrite their reports, completely omitting the giant under penalty of all sorts of stuff. And that was the end of it. He finally, after years, came to us because he felt that the American people had a right to know, the people of the world had a right to know that Nephilim were walking amongst us even today. And here's something to think about. We don't know, this is the second incursion in my opinion. And when Joshua and Caleb pressed to conquest, when you look at the Middle East and you go over, you go through Jordan, Iraq, Iran, presto, there's Afghanistan, very, very close. So, you've got plenty of time for these guys to walk over. I also found out from another witness that there was another team that was dispatched to that location that went into the cave, and a firefight ensued. That's hearsay. Apparently they killed one and the other two vanished. Now that's from this person, who told me about this. I can't vet that, just like I can't vet the Kandahar giant. But we had multiple witnesses. Something is going on there. And by the way, this was the one part where I was threatened by a guy from the deep state. He said specifically, because of your film on the Kandahar giant, when we come to arrest you, we could find kiddie porn on your cell phone. What car do you drive? I drive a go-kart, a 1991 Mercedes-Benz SL 500, which I restored. Does it have a computer? Yeah, well, we can mess with the computer. Do you have any children? Yeah, I do. Well, one of them can go missing and never be found again. I was threatened 3 times by this guy in less than 5 minutes. And I told him, and I'm not some great big spiritual giant, but I said, yeah, I get that. You can squash me like a bug, but you can't do anything unless the Most High God allows it. And that was like a punch to his stomach. And the only reason why I say that, because if anything ever happens to me, now it's on record. It's on record.
Yeah. I mean, this is the amazing stuff that as we hear about it and we wonder, is it true? But LA is getting to talk to the actual people that are there, and which is amazing. We're going to take a little break here. We can see how to, again, get all of the information that is here, which I find fascinating. I can sit here and watch it all day long.
Many of you have followed the adventures of L.A. Marzulli and Richard Shaw for many years, as we've watched them travel the world in search of ancient artifacts and biblical mysteries. This led to the creation of their Watchers DVD series, 11 films, taking us places few men have gone before. L.A. calls the Bible the guidebook to the supernatural and believes these curious subjects need to be investigated from a biblical perspective. Rejecting the liberal narratives of ancient aliens, L.A. and Richard took us in a supernatural direction, exploring the curious corners of history. Who can forget their journeys to the private museums and caves of Peru, where they discovered the elongated skulls of the hybrid Nephilim race we read about in Genesis 6. New adventures followed as he began to examine the world of UFOs, taking his viewers to an actual UFO ranch where people can watch these aerial shows at night. This led to his relationship with Dr. Roger Lear, who specialized in removing alien implants from UFO abductees. Gary Stearman is featured in one of his films, sharing his own personal UFO encounter over the skies of Texas in 1969, a secret he kept to himself for over 40 years. A serious mechanical failure and hours of lost time led Gary to believe he was truly rescued by an angel from an impending disaster. Richard developed a keen interest in the Bible codes. Working with a rabbi from Israel, they uncovered yet another supernatural side of the Bible, proving divine authorship in a mathematical way. Detailed expert interviews and examinations of the Shroud of Turin are part of the journey, as is the legendary Spear of Destiny, the Roman spear that once pierced the side of Jesus, the Hollow Earth, the Nazca Lines, the Kandahar Giant, near-death experiences, even an interview with the late prophecy legend Chuck Missler. It's all in there. The Watchers DVD series includes all 11 DVDs chronicling all of the adventures you've heard about today and many more. Originally priced at $240, we've cut the price in half and included 2 free bonuses: Gary's DVD, Rescued by an Angel, and Tom Horn's groundbreaking DVD on Ragnarok, the gigantic asteroid that many believe is scheduled to hit the Earth in the next few years. All 11 DVDs, plus the 2 bonus DVDs, are included for your gift of $120 or more with free shipping anywhere in the USA. Call the number you see on your screen 24/7 or visit us online at prophecywatchers.tv. For our international friends, please note that additional shipping fees do apply and all prices listed are in US dollars. Thanks for joining us today for another look into the supernatural side of the Bible, and thanks for your faithful support of Prophecy Watchers.
Well, welcome back, and we are talking to L.A. Marzulli. And L.A., this collection is just phenomenal. And in our last minute here, talk about the evangelistic tone that you have in your own heart, but also how this is addressing, again, the interesting topics that people are in.
What Rick and I did with this is we sort of walked the fence until one of the last chapters where I said, if you think you know him but you don't know him, then you don't know him, talking about Jesus. We finally kind of tipped our hand. But we made it so you could sit down with your unsaved friends, put this thing on, and open the door to a conversation, and then, kind of go from there. But towards the end of the filming, we did, let people know exactly where we were coming from.
Well, L.A., appreciate your time, as always. It's good
thanks for having me on, Mondo. Really appreciate it.
We appreciate you watching this week. It is always fun to come together and, again, to think about the Bible, all the fascinating things that are happening in our world that God wants us to think about, and also to put into a biblical context. So appreciate your prayers for all and support for all that we do here. We could not do without you. And as always, the reason we're here is to promote the gospel of Jesus Christ, that salvation is found only through him. And all the crazy things in the world that might be there, that the enemy tries to use as deception, we know that the Bible is absolutely true and gives us the answers to what we need. So thanks for watching this week. We'll catch you next time.
The media ministry of Prophecy Watchers exists only through the faithful prayer and financial support of friends like you. To find out how to help us, please visit our website at prophecywatchers.com.